Welcome in to the 411 on Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Blake Lovell, and flying solo here on this episode of the podcast to share some thoughts on WWE Money in the Bank from Sunday night in Fort Worth. And it was quite a show with a lot of significant developments from a lot of different sides. When you look at certainly returns, people who won matches and are now potentially catapulted into much bigger spots. Overall, just I thought a really fun show. With just a lot of things coming out of it now as the road to SummerSlam begins. But let's jump right in. It did start with one particular development on the pre-show, and that was the Usos defeating Rey and Dominik Mysterio to win the SmackDown Tag Team titles. Of course, the immediate reaction was, why are the Usos winning? When you had the recent events with Jim Uso, the arrest, and those things. And I think, look, WWE has not even released a statement on the situation yet. And remember, this has happened a while ago, I guess, in wrestling terms. What was it, a couple weeks ago or whatever it's been now? But it's like, I mean, this is just something that clearly they, were not going to address. They've not addressed it at all. I mean, he was on immediately after on SmackDown. And I think from a storyline standpoint, look, this was the direction they were going in. You knew that if they were going to build to this match, the Usos were probably going to win, so they can sort of continue to further everything going on with Roman Reigns. And now all three of them have championships. It's not surprising at all, I think, for the storyline for the Usos to win this match. But I do understand, when you look across social media and a lot of the responses, the fact that WWE, did not address the thing with Jimmy Uso at all, and now to have it where basically, I mean, very soon after, he's now one half of the tag team champions again with, his brother. And I just think it's something that I get the reaction I think anyone would when you just look at it, again, how this situation unfolded, the history and everything involved. And so, yeah, it's just, I think it's WWE has clearly decided that, look, I mean, they've done it before where they've said, talent is responsible for their own actions and those kind of things. But like, you really didn't even get that on this situation. So in a long line of things, this is probably, not that surprising in terms of how WWE maybe has gone about handling this. So I think it's just, I'm not sure, maybe what direction they go in next. But this is clearly something that I think storyline wise, they knew they wanted to get to this point, and they did. And it seemed like, nothing was going to stop that. And like it or not, this is just kind of what they decided on. So, I mean, yeah, it's, I understand all of the reactions and everything. And I wonder, is that one of the reasons they put this on the pre-show rather than having it on the main show? You can make a lot of justifications for that. But it is something that I think I did find a little bit curious. But it was already a pretty lengthy show, I think, on the main card itself. So that could also be something that goes along with it. But nonetheless, the Usos are the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, and that will certainly play into what they have moving forward storyline-wise with everything going on with Roman Reigns. But that sent us into the main show, which started with the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. And I thought this was one going in. The build was not great, which we're gonna have that same thought on something that greatly exceeded expectations in a little bit later on when we talk about another match. But it just seemed like this was one that was certainly thrown together a bit more maybe than the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, and there just wasn't seeming a lot of rhyme or reason for some of the women in terms of earning their spot and those kind of things. But nonetheless, I mean, I think you looked at it, it's an interesting field. Didn't really know, I think, what to expect in terms of a winner. I think this one was, pretty wide open for a lot of the part. I mean, you could have justified some of these other people. Naomi, could you have made a case for that? Sure, you could have. Selena Vega, even though I think she's just sort of been an afterthought at this point since her return. I mean, she did get beat by Liv Morgan in 2 minutes, basically right after she returned. So you kind of pretty much understood where she was going to get slotted right away. But that's WWE. Like, could they have just done that just to swerve everybody and have her win this match? Sure, I guess they could have. But I think you had some interesting situations you could have went with. I think, Natalya and Tamina were probably not going to win the match. I think those were probably the obvious two that you just really did not expect. But you could have made a case for the other six, I think. With Alexa Bliss, I thought that her character, it was a big question. Is her character going to be over based on all these things they've done with her during the pandemic era without a crowd? I think she was still over for the most part. When you saw the reaction, despite the booking, I mean, the fans are still into what she's doing. And I thought her character work to start the match was pretty great, where she's just standing up on the ropes on the side, just sort of staring at everyone. Of course, during the match, you had her, hypnotizing Zelina and all this other stuff, which, some people will like that, some people will not. For the character, I mean, it's, we've come to expect it at this point. So I can't say, again, it's not something you're really shocked by. But this is just one of those things where the character, it was going to be interesting to see, I think, how the crowd reacted to her. But as long as they're not just going full force with some of those things, and she still, can kind of be what she was in this match as an active competitor, where you're just not overwhelming everything with the different layers of her character that we've seen. If it's still within the world of professional wrestling, I think that people will still, appreciate what she can do. And I think you kind of saw that here. I think something else that stood out in this match, Liv Morgan, I feel like she just seems like a star to me. And I think that's where booking comes in. You can certainly portray someone as a star. You can portray someone as sort of you portray someone as an afterthought. But I think for Liv Morgan, like, we've seen glimpses of that in the past, and I thought the crowd really reacted to her here too. I mean, Naomi, I think, is one that got a big pop coming out. There's just it's hard to know, I think, based off of just one crowd reaction for some of these people. You have the obvious ones that we know that have just been top stars. But I think when you talk about people that you're trying to elevate, it's always curious to see kind of what the crowd's going to do. And I think, again, for people like Liv Morgan, Naomi, ones like that, there's still something there. And I don't know that WWE ever sort of, puts them in that spot again. I mean, there are going to be lots of opportunities, but I think you still kind of see that there is something there. And maybe it's a similar situation with Asuka, where I think Asuka's kind of just now that person where she's always going to be over to some extent. I think she's just built up a body of work to this point where people are probably, at least I am, always going to appreciate what she can do. But there were lots of different elements in this match that, there's just, it wasn't the greatest match, I think, from a technical standpoint or anything like that. I think there were obviously, this was not going to reach the level of the men's match. I think we all probably realized that. But at the same time, I think the crowd reactions were the most interesting thing to me, just to sort of see what people responded to, what they thought of people like Alexa Bliss, Liv Morgan, and such. And I think you got that here. And that leads us to who actually won the match, which was, Nikki A.S.H, this character that is one that has certainly drawn a lot of different feedback, I think, since it was introduced. But I get kind of where they're going with her. And now, with her as the Money in the Bank winner, I don't really know exactly what the next step is, but that's for WWE to decide. Like, that's for them to put her in a point to where, you really want to buy in if and when she eventually becomes the champion. And I think the one thing I'm a little hesitant about is, boy, they really continue to play up the fact that every single women's Money in the Bank winner has become champion. And I hope that doesn't mean, that's kind of one of those WWE things where they just beat it into your head so much to where they're going to go in the opposite direction to where maybe she loses. I don't think that does her any favors if eventually they get there and they do that. I can't see this being one of those cash-ins that's going to happen anytime soon. Like, I feel like, sometimes you can kind of look and say, all right, I could see this person cashing in pretty quickly. I don't think that's the case with Nikki, because as we're going to talk about, I think their women's matches are pretty set. Moving forward in terms of just Raw and SmackDown. And, she could always be drafted in SmackDown. But I just think either way, I don't see them putting her in a position to cash this thing in anytime soon. But maybe I'm wrong. But I just think that they have a pretty clear direction where they're going with their top women's stars and titles. I just don't think she's cashing anytime soon. But for her, it's all about how do they continue to build that character? How do they continue to move forward with it? I think that's going to be the big thing to look for with her. But like I said, I would also like to see maybe something a little more in depth with someone like Liv Morgan, and I think it's going to be, where does the Alexa Bliss character go from here? Those types of things. That's something where I think, you see those things stand out in this particular match, and there's someone in the men's match we'll talk about in a few that could be in a similar situation, but where do they go from here? And do they just go back to the 50-50, everyone's just kind of there? or do you take away some of the parts of this match that really stood out? Like I said, I think, crowd reaction to Alexa, Liv Morgan, those kind of care, Naomi. Is there something you can figure out to do with them that can continue to kind of elevate them? So we'll see. But it is Nikki with the women's Money in the Bank briefcase, and we'll see where they go from there with that. Next up was the tag team championship match on Raw, which was AJ Styles and Omos defeating the Viking Raiders. And I tell you, this was one that I did not have a lot of expectations for because we just didn't. Again, we talk about the build and every on Raw. I think they're to a certain extent, they did a more poor job of building some of the feuds on Raw than they did on SmackDown. But I just think this was, you talk about crowd reaction, like AJ and almost like they were over. They were really over. And I think that was something that, when you see them paired together, I think initially people were wondering, oh man, is this going to take AJ out of kind of one of those top spots and he's just going to sort of be kind of one of those guys that falls into sort of the mid-card level, but like they felt like a top level act here. And I think that's notable because, we didn't know what to expect with Omos and what's he gonna, is he gonna be someone that they're really gonna be able to take this from where they started, basically at WrestleMania? Can they get, months and months out of this? And like, I feel like it's not even like we're just going up. Like now we're not even on the downswing yet of these two. And I will say that probably is a little bit surprising, not just for me, but probably for other people, not knowing exactly how long they were going to be able to kind of, push this out. And it was all about seeing, his development and could he be right there with AJ in terms of being able to deliver on those types of levels. You knew he wasn't going to be able to have the type of match that AJ could, let's say in a singles fashion or anything like that, but they have done a really good job, I think, of putting Omos in there. And basically, I think, it's all about how you book someone like him who doesn't have a lot of experience, but he just is such a unique specimen when you just look at the size of this guy. I thought he looked really good here. And I just think it's one of those situations where you look at it now and, they're clearly, to me, setting up for probably going to have AJ and Omos against Randy Orton and Riddle, like you're going to do the RK Bro thing at SummerSlam. Like on paper, maybe a month or two ago, you're like, I don't really know about that. But I think now, like that feels like a pretty good match. Like that feels like something that the crowd's going to really be into. And this was like, I thought this was better than expected. And this does not take anything away from the Viking Raiders because I thought they actually performed pretty well here. Again, for a team that you talk about the booking that's been really up and down, but I thought they looked good in this match. But they also helped too, and really just helping, I think, get Omos over. It was good stuff, and this is one again where I didn't have a lot of high expectations coming in, but it delivered, and it really stood out how over the champs are there on Raw, and I do think that's going to make for kind of a fun and entertaining build moving forward as we head towards that SummerSlam match, which, like I said, will likely, at least it seems right now, will be against Orton and Riddle. So lots to work with there, but these two guys are over. It's just it's good stuff, I think, with what they've done with these two in particular. Speaking of Raw, that led us to the WWE Championship match. Bobby Lashley successfully defending the title against Kofi Kingston. I don't think we went into this expecting Kofi Kingston to win the title, but when he came out and got that just massive pop right off it was one of the loudest pops of the night. Of course, there's going to be one that exceeds it a bit later on. But, the crowd loved Kofi, and I think that is, again, Kofi is someone that now you can put in these situations, and maybe it's not Kofi Mania again, but you can still put him in these spots, and the crowd is going to be invested, and they were here, even though the things went pretty south pretty quickly for Kofi. But I thought this was the kind of match that it really needed to be to continue to kind of display Lashley's dominance to where he's tired of. We've seen it kind of in the build too, and this was something I thought the build was pretty good for this particular feud. But we saw kind of Lashley hit that next gear, I think, with the promo he had last week or whenever it was about just kind of getting a little more serious and needing to kind of show that, look, he is this dominant champion when he wants to be. And I thought this was kind of it, where you really knew. I mean, yes, I don't think there was a lot of people thinking that Kofi was going to win this thing, and they never really led you in that direction. This was all about Lashley and setting him up as much as they could, to really display again his dominance, his strength, his power, all of that. And I thought it was really what it needed to be, knowing where they're headed next. And I think that is where you're going to see a lot of different opinions. Mine will probably be one of those as well. We know that, at least according to the reports, we're headed towards Lashley versus Goldberg at SummerSlam. And I think this is one where all of this stuff with Kofi, to have Lashley win the match this way and to be this just dominant sort of champion going in, coming out victorious, saying, hey, when I want to turn it on, I can be, as good as anybody. That's great leading into this Goldberg match. But I almost hope that they will take it a step further here and maybe try to do something exactly similar to what they did here with Goldberg. Like, do this. If you're Lashley, don't just have him go in and have this 50-50 match with Goldberg, where, Lashley's on the defense the entire match, which I don't, this isn't going to be a 20-minute match or anything. I don't think they're going to go that direction. This feels like another one of those kind of short, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And I think 10 is probably your max on a match like this. But I think you go, 5, 8, whatever minutes, and you really hammer home the fact that Lashley is this unbeatable guy, and have him beat Goldberg. I'm not saying he's going to throw him around like he did Kofi or anything like that, but I think you need to have another dominant Lashley win here at SummerSlam. And I don't know if they go that way. Maybe it is one where, I don't know what they do, but I don't think they're putting the title on Goldberg. I will say that right now. I know that's a fear for people. I just can't imagine it. I guess as we've seen with WWE over the years, expect the unexpected at times, but I just don't see that being a situation. I feel like this is sort of that, not really a starting point, but it's sort of like a newer version of Lashley. I feel like that they've got a pretty defined direction now for where they want to go with him. So you would think that means he's going to take care of business against Goldberg. Like I said, maybe it's not, in squash fashion or anything like that, but I just think that that's the right move here. You need to have Lashley in this program. The build will probably be fine, because, it is someone where they're going to bring Goldberg back. What does it do for ratings? Who knows? But, I mean, Goldberg's got 2 matches a year on his contract, and he's got to get another one in, I guess, here sooner rather than later. And so this is what they're going to go with, knowing that they're building SummerSlam up, as the second biggest show of the year, or, as some reports have talked about, they're wanting them to build this like a WrestleMania. It's on paper, it's Goldberg. Like, Goldberg, someone who still has star value, star name, all this stuff. But in terms of the match, I just think that Lashley needs to, develop this continued dominant streak. And I think that's where, we'll obviously talk more about this moving forward. But I thought that this was kind of the step towards that. And since that point, I'm recording this on Monday morning. I think Lashley on his Twitter, or they were even saying it on commentary, who could possibly step up and challenge Lashley. And then I think Lashley put on Twitter, one of his things about winning. And then he said, who's next? Which, again, we know what that's leading to. But we'll talk more about that as we go along the road to SummerSlam. But a dominant win from Lashley, and hopefully that will be sort of the springboard for what's to come with his likely match with Goldberg at SummerSlam. And then more Raw here, as it was Charlotte Flair winning the Raw Women's Championship from Rhea Ripley. And this was the one, as I alluded to earlier, the build to this match, in quite simple terms, I thought it sucked. I just did not think it was very good. I just was not invested in this build at all. Like, I had no idea what they were doing from a character standpoint. I still don't think that it maybe changes all that much with this one match, but at least we got what probably, I think it's hard to completely, for me, to grade the Money in the Bank men's matches we're going to talk about in a second because of some issues streaming wise, but I thought this is still, as I look back at this card, like, this match was, again, if you want to call it the best, I don't know that I would argue with it, but it was certainly, a top tier match, not just on this particular card, but I think, it's one of those matches that has stood out in WWE this year to date, with Charlotte winning the title from Rhea Ripley. But this is another example of the build can be terrible, but WWE they have found a way for the most part to be able to deliver when it comes to these pay-per-view matches. And I thought from the very beginning, people are chanting, we want Becky. Everybody wants Becky Lynch. Like the crowd totally into her. And look, from the beginning, can you blame them? Like knowing the build to this, I don't think there was a lot of interest in this match just because they had not built this up in a cohesive way to make you that invested in what you were going to see. But then these two were able to take that from the very beginning of the match. Like it's one of those where, what was it, many years ago, like you just have the crowd going wild. It was during was it Sheamus and Orton, something like that, a match on Raw where the crowd's just chanting every other thing, all that stuff. And it's just like, we've seen that before, and you were like, oh boy, like they could go in this direction. But these two were able to completely flip that to where, Charlotte, like her or not, when she's on, like she's on. And we saw that here from the very beginning. Crowd's doing all these chants. You had the Peacock blackout where I guess that they cut it out where Charlotte's giving the middle finger to the crowd and all this other stuff. I just thought that was terrific. And of course, whether it was intentional or not, like to actually black part of that out, I just didn't think it made any sense. I think it just added so much to the match. And I think from there, the crowd was hooked. Like they were hooked on Charlotte. And then I think the more you go along, Rhea Ripley has a role to play here too. And I said it on Twitter. I'm still, kind of mind blown about WWE not having any idea what to do with Rhea Ripley's character on the main roster. I still don't know if they do. I don't know if this match is going to change that. But I just think that they have really kind of, fumbled that. And we talked about, Steve and I talked about that on a previous episode. We're talking about sort of NXT call-ups and all that. And Rhea's probably, despite being champion, like I just don't think she's been booked well at all. But this is the kind of match where you can get going in the right direction because of how good this was. I still don't know what they do with her moving forward, but this was just a spectacular display, I thought, for these two to be able to take the crowd from where they were when the match started to where they finished and to have people kind of hanging on all these different big moves, big spots. It really was. Like, it was fantastic, and it's one, like, I want to go back and rewatch this one again because it may even be better the second time around. But on the initial watch, like, it was stellar. And again, props to those two because they were not given much to work with from a build standpoint. But I thought they absolutely delivered here with one of the best matches of the night. And again, I would not argue if you want to even say that this was the match of the night. Just from everything involved, like this was great work from both of them. And hopefully, that serves as something here where it helps Rhea moving forward because she needs something from a character standpoint. But I think this is also something where, Charlotte's back. Like, again, like her or not, I know some people do not, kind of care for how WWE has booked Charlotte over the years. But I think this was kind of one of those things that was pretty well deserved from that standpoint to be able to have them deliver this type of match. It was just, boy, it was great. Like, they really came through in a match that not a lot of people were invested in. But I think that this is really going to be a situation where there's a lot they can do moving forward. And now it does set up the inevitable question of, is this where they go to Charlotte versus Becky? Does Becky come back? They make that match. Would not be surprised at all if that's the direction they're going, because that would give you the possibility of having Charlotte versus Becky at SummerSlam and the likelihood, based on rumors and all that you're going to get Bianca versus Sasha. That would be two huge matches from a women's standpoint at SummerSlam. So I think that's the curious thing. We see if that's where they head. But this is one, if you didn't see the show, go back and, like, really, we're going to say this about the last three matches here. Like we said, there's other good stuff on the card, but this is a must-watch match based on what these two do. So these two did because they were fantastic here. So then it was the men's Money in the Bank ladder match, and unfortunately, this is where the Peacock streaming heirs decided to take over a little bit in terms of everybody was just losing their minds, me included, like trying to figure out what was going on. I tried to switch a couple times. I'm like, okay, is it my TV? Is it, can I see if it works on the computer? Like all this other stuff. And this is all basically during the entrances, which I wasn't pleased with because I wanted to hear the reaction of some of these people because the crowd had somewhat been booing, I guess, Drew McIntyre earlier when he did the promo. And I was like, okay, are they really going to, boo Drew McIntyre to this level? That would change a bit as the match went along. But I just really wanted to hear the crowd reactions because, like I said earlier, I think it's such a big part knowing that this is a unique situation and you really want to see what the crowd reacts to with some of these people. But nonetheless, I think it was still once the feed came back, which it took a little while, and I joked on Twitter, it's not ideal when you have a pay per view that's part of a $1 billion rights agreement with Peacock and the WWE, where you have people on Twitter having to give advice on how to actually make it work. You have to log out, log back in, or restart the app and all this other stuff. And it's just, I get it. Technical stuff happens. So, but it did not come at a great time because this was the match I think most people are probably looking forward to the most when it comes to just all of the talent involved. And this is, it delivered like you knew it was going to. They had a great match, and I thought that there was a lot of different spots in this match that you could point to and say, wow, like we're used to that with these Money in the Bank ladder matches, but there were a lot of wow moments with what some of these, talents can do. I thought that Ricochet, and it's not a surprise probably when we've seen Ricochet in some of these matches before, and knowing that he is one of the best high flyers out there. I think even Edge, he was on the Kurt Angle show recently, and Edge even said, he's like, Ricochet is just, he called him one of the best, I think, of all time, like just in terms of what he can do from a high flying standpoint. And it's hard to argue with that based on what you saw in this match. I thought he really stood out in some of the spots they did, not just maybe from his offensive stuff, but also just selling some of the moves that he had to sell. And look, can Ricochet ever get a proper push in WWE at this point without maybe the top tier mic skills or those types of things? I've said before, absolutely you can, because it's all about booking strengths, right? And that's, Paul Heyman always talked about that, and everybody's talked about that with Paul Heyman before, but it's like you book to the strengths, in which they've done that. Look at someone like Omos and guys like that. Like they have booked to people's strengths before, but I think it's one where there's no reason they cannot continue to find a way to have Ricochet as a not necessarily a main event star, but as one of those talents that you can kind of put on and know that you're going to have fantastic matches, which we've seen it with Morrison and such in recent weeks. But I just think that Ricochet, there's a lot more there that I wish they would tap into. He's never going to headline WrestleMania, I don't think, from, just looking at it from a WWE standpoint, knowing what they want in those types of spots. But there's still a lot I feel like they can do with Ricochet. But elsewhere, I mean, really, again, it's not like anyone else was not in a position to really shine here, because everyone, I thought, looked good in this thing. They had their chances to get their stuff in. And, and that's where, like I said, you know what you're getting with Drew McIntyre. You know what you're getting with Seth Rollins. Pretty much everyone in this match. Like, you know what you're getting with John Morrison. He's been in these matches before. Riddle, he's kind of, exploded into someone that has really been pushed, to a standpoint that we know he's going to be kind of in that upper tier based on everything he's got going on with Randy Orton and such. And then the winner, Big E, which I thought was the right call. I just felt like of all the people in the match, Big E probably needed this more than anyone to really establish him as a world title threat. This is kind of, again, you knew he needed this, I think, to elevate him to that spot, because the stuff with Apollo Crews, it's been fine. Like the feud he had Intercontinental title wise, but I don't know necessarily that this is kind of a situation where you look at this and feel like, Big E was just going to somehow get there without them giving him that extra push. And he needed a little something, I think, to get him to that point. And I know people have talked about, the character and such. Like, is that something to where do they need to refine that a little bit? I think there are parts of it they can refine a bit to get him, maybe, but still, like, the crowd still loves him. And he's really over. Like, we saw that from the finish. I think he was the best choice. And I've made the argument before, if you're going to try to figure out who do we need to beat Roman Reigns when he finally loses that title, I don't think that, Cena, Rock, Lesnar, any of those huge names, they don't need that situation to elevate them. But if you find a way to build up someone like Big E to that spot and you have him be the one to beat Roman Reigns, now you've got your top star established moving forward. Like you immediately catapult him to that status just by winning that match, whereas the others that are these blockbuster main event type matches that WWE, we know loves to do, and we know they'll bring in a lot of money. If it's Reigns and Rock headlining WrestleMania, or if it's Reigns and Lesnar, or any of these other matches, we know they're doing Reigns and Cena at SummerSlam. But if you want to just do it for kind of where your company is right now, and look, I know Big E's 35. Like, it's not like he's a younger star, but WWE's got main eventers in their 40s, and like it's kind of one where 35 is kind of young in WWE terms at this point. So it was the best call, I think. And now, you can still do Rollins, the tension with Reigns and all that stuff. You can do all that without Money in the Bank. And we know that we're going to lead to Rollins versus Edge, which we'll get to in a second. But I just think Big E was the right call here. And now it's how do you establish him, to where is he the one that beats Roman Reigns, or do you do the draft or do you do it in a situation where Big E cashes in on Bobby Lashley? Either way, I think it works out either way. And I think that, again, Big E is someone that's going to be the world champion at some point. It's just which direction do you go with that? And do you feel that he's the one that could eventually, kind of dethrone Roman Reigns? And that's where the questions come in. But that's also on WWE to put him in that spot. So I think I thought that it was great for Big E, knowing that this is someone that the crowd has really been behind. We know for a lot of his career, like we just seen it. He's someone that's easy to root for, easy to get behind, and I think now it's a situation where they've got it in place. Now it's how do you execute it? How do you put him in a spot now to win if he does eventually become the world champion? He is in a spot to succeed, and that's going to be the thing to see how that goes. But great match here, and not surprising because I think we knew this match was going to deliver. So, and then we wrapped up with Edge versus Roman Reigns. It was Roman Reigns successfully defending the Universal Championship in a pretty lengthy match here. This one went over 30 minutes, and it was just kind of one of those where they really focused on story here. It was not an action-packed sprint from the beginning. I saw some people complaining on social media, which, people do that all the time. But I think it's just like you had to know the expectations. This was not going to be just a complete sprint, from start to finish. I think you knew you were going to get a lot of story elements added in, and they did that here, a lot of wrinkles based on the build to this match. And it got there. Like, it's one of those where it was the definition of a slow build, where they started off, and then they just worked and added another layer. They kept adding, and then that led to the finish where you have, a ref bump, and then you knew from there there's going to be a lot of involvement here from others. The Usos get involved, the Mysterios come down. Seth Rollins is the one that sort of factors into the finish, where he comes out the first time, then he comes back, and then that's kind of a distraction for Edge. That allows Reigns to hit the spear and win it. But it sets up, you do a lot there in that finish, even though there's a lot going on. You continue the sort of theme now, which you're probably going to get the Usos and Mysterios again. You're going to get Rollins versus Edge at SummerSlam. And there were times, where I thought they made you believe that Edge may actually win this thing, even though I think the more you looked at it, you realized the direction they were going to head in. And hey, I think by adding in the element of having Seth Rollins having the promo before saying, look, I'm going to be the next person in line for the championship, when he did the promo before this main event, you're thinking, okay, do they maybe do this to where we don't need Reigns and Cena, which we're about to get to, as, the championship match? That's a spectacle in and of itself. Do we possibly flip the title here to Edge and have Edge versus Rollins for the title? I never thought that was an actual possibility, because I don't think they have any plans for Roman Reigns to lose this title unless it's just in a massive, massive moment, probably at WrestleMania. And that's where I just did not expect that. But still, there were times where they made you sort of believe in Edge. But as we know, it was Reigns coming out on top and setting up all this other sort of side stuff to lead to the big one, which was the return of John Cena. And we talk about pops. I loved Kofi Kingston's pop. A lot of other people had some big pops on this card, but my goodness, the John Cena pop was just insane. And it's just incredible to know that, look, this guy's been gone for quite a while now, and it's hard to believe, as long as it's been. But it's just like he and Roman Reigns is just one of those matches. Yes, we've seen it before, but where both of these two are at now, it's just such a spectacle. Like, it was always going to be a spectacle when these two were in, because, they have been sort of defined as, I guess, the previous chosen ones from WWE, like the chosen top babyface stars, and they were pushed as such. And as we know, it didn't always work out very well for both of them. But yet, they've now sort of met to this point here in July of 2021, where Reigns is he's at the top of his game, without question. You have Cena coming back. in just the hottest possible situation because he's been gone. His stardom has rose in terms of Hollywood, all this other stuff. And now you have these two going at each other for the Universal Championship in the main event of SummerSlam. This is, I mean, talk about dream matches and all this other stuff. I don't know if you put that in that category because, again, we have seen it before. But I just think, if you're Vince McMahon and everything you do is leading up, to your top main event at your arguably, your second biggest show of the entire year, there's really no other direction to go. Like, if you knew you're getting John Cena back, you've got Roman Reigns here as hot as he's ever been. There's no other way to do it, and there's no other way to go than having these two. And I can only imagine what the crowd reaction is going to be for these two. We know there's going to be the dueling chants. You're going to have everything going on here, but I just think this is going to be an absolute spectacle with these two. And it's just, I thought it was fitting that they, you end the show with this. You have a little bit of a cliffhanger, not knowing exactly what's going to happen. And we've seen since now, as I'm recording this, Cena's going to be on Raw. He's going to kick off the show on Raw. So who knows what goes along with that. But we know where this is headed. It's going to be John Cena versus Roman Reigns at SummerSlam. And it's going to be, one of those matches that people are going to really be invested in. And as I said, we'll talk about it going forward. I think, I don't really see any reason why you're going to have Cena win. I mean, you're going to talk about, the records and all these other stuff, that, Cena's title reigns and everything. But I just think that this is one where this is just adds another sort of, notch under the belt for Roman Reigns in terms of what this character has been able to accomplish. So it's going to be fascinating, but it's just, this felt like a show, and really to have Cena cap it off. We've seen some of the returns they've had. Finn Balor returned on SmackDown. We know the Becky return is just, inevitable at this point. We know Goldberg, like we said, is coming back on Raw. It feels refreshed. Everything, we've talked about a lot when it comes to Raw and everything over the years. And yes, like there has been a lot to nitpick in recent months when it comes to Raw. And, the ratings have kind of reflected some of the issues, they've had on both shows. Like both of them have been perfect. Like they haven't been perfect on SmackDown either. But this is something where you feel refreshed now. You hope, okay, you've got all this, you're pulling all this out. I know a lot of it still involves, former past stars, but if you use them in the right way, that's fine. It's not like, you can't just have everyone come back. Now, look, if Cena come back and wins the title, if Goldberg comes back and wins the title, then we're having a different conversation. But if you use them in the right way to elevate your current stars, that's fine. And it does sort of feel like you have a complete sort of refresh here for WWE. You've got a lot of new directions storyline-wise. You've got people coming back that are going to be cornerstones of your company. Like we said, maybe not just the people like Goldberg who are coming back for one-offs or anything like that. But you've got Becky coming back. Like we said, Cena's going to hang around seemingly for a little while. So there's a lot of optimism, and I hesitate to say that sometimes with WWE because, as we've seen, we've been burned a lot on that. But I think there is reason for optimism now to see what they can do with this because, this was a great show. Like, this was just a very good pay-per-view, and I think that how do you, follow up on that? That's always the question, and that's going to be kind of where we set our expectations heading into, at least on paper, what looks like a fantastic SummerSlam card. So that was Money in the Bank, and just some thoughts. Wanted to kind of share some of those based on, again, a lot was happening on this pay-per-view, and it's probably going to lead into a lot of stuff coming out of it on this week's Raw and SmackDown. But, of course, we'll have all that covered over at 411mania.com. You can check everything out there. Be sure to check out our reviews, our written reviews that we have over there on Money in the Bank as well. And, of course, we'll have a coverage of all the shows throughout the week, not just WWE, but AEW, Impact, all of that. So check everything out there, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast as always. Just search for 411 on Wrestling. You can subscribe there. And as we teased on the previous episode of the podcast, we are going to continue sort of our retro reviews. Steve and I will be back in an upcoming episode with our Backlash 2002 review to kind of build off of our first one on the WWE draft in 2002 we did a couple weeks ago. So we'll be back with that one. And again, the GoFundMe for Larry Zonka's family, that'll continue to be in the show notes. So be sure to continue to share and contribute if you can. And as always, thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. And we'll talk to you next time here on the 411 on Wrestling Podcast.